Education Finance Conference Committee is called to order. We have some new guests at the table today that I'm going to have introduce themselves. We'll start out with Annie Mock from House Fiscal and Research.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Annie Mock with House Research.
Madam Chair, I'm Sarah Sunderman from House Research.
And I'm Doug Berg, House Fiscal Staff for the Children and Families Committee.
Madam Chair, I'm Allie Hoffman-Litchie with Senate Counsel.
And then we have some other new members at the witness table right now. So could you both please introduce yourselves?
Chair Dave Pinto, State Rep from St. Paul, and the Chair of the Children and Families Committee in the House.
Melissa Wickland, State Senator. I am the Chair of the Health and Human Services Committee.
Thank you. And our friends are here today because the Children's and Families articles that were in HHS are now moving over to our K through 12 bill. So what we're going to do is have both Senator Wickland and Representative Pinto just give some opening remarks, and then we're going to move through the articles with fiscal staff giving a brief, or with nonpartisan staff giving a brief description. And then after each article, we'll open it up for questions and then vote on adoption. So with that, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the plan is that I'm going to speak just a bit about the process of being here, and then Senator Wickland is going to talk about the more important thing, which is the wonderful provisions and funding that is being presented to the conference committee. And so on behalf of both Senator Wickland and myself, we really want to thank Chairs Youakim and Kunesh and the members of the conference committee for your accommodation and consideration of this admittedly unusual structural setup here. The Children and Families budget area is split in a couple different ways between our two bodies. I'm hopeful, I think Senator Wickland is as well, that in the future as we establish the Department of Children, Youth and Families, things will be a lot clearer and kind of work more effectively. But right at the moment, we have a number of committees in our bodies that are kind of overlapping in different ways. So Senator Wickland's committee, Health and Human Services in the Senate, has jurisdiction over provisions that are carried in Chair Liebling's area and health in the House, but also in my area in Children and Families. And there are some Department of Education provisions and jurisdiction that are carried in both Senator Kunesh's, Chair Kunesh's area in the Senate and in Children and Families in the House. So in any case, there was a bill, House File 2476, that contained the House Children and Families budget. The Senate passed equivalent provisions in a different bill that matched up with Chair Liebling's bill. Bear with me here. And so kind of matching those up ends up being challenging. So Senator Wickland and I have been having a number of conversations and talking with colleagues, and have to present to you today a number of provisions in the articles that are going to be offered and in the spreadsheet as well, that reflect an agreement to resolve the differences between the two bodies regarding the Children and Families budget area and related provisions. And so it seemed to us, and we were so grateful to the chairs, that it would make sense that having reached that agreement and given where we're at in session, that it would make sense to present that to this conference committee and to move forward with these provisions, traveling along with the good work that you all have been doing. I think that probably sets things up well in terms of process. But again, we're really, really grateful to all of you for the chance to present these and to have the discussion today. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. Senator Wickland.
Yeah, just to add on, I also want to extend my appreciation for being able to present this to you and being able to work with you and be accommodated in this bill. I think we did a lot of good work over the past few days on the Children and Families area, and I'm really excited about the provisions and the budget items that we have brought forward, and the opportunity to have them included in your bill. Also, helping children and families is really exciting to me, and I appreciate the opportunity for staff to kind of walk through the articles. But some of the highlights from our bill in terms of areas of emphasis for us were to address child welfare and protection areas, We also have significant funding for addressing food security, both with the governor's summer EBT program funding and as well as addressing food security through food banks and food shelves and the tribal food shelves. Another area of emphasis was addressing some childcare provisions, also child protection. Due to the work of the Child Protection Task Force, there were provisions brought forward that were heard in both the House and Senate, and this is where we've collected some of those provisions in this bill. And we also have, we would like to do more, but we have some funding for the Emergency Services Program to address what we know is a critical need for addressing homelessness in Minnesota. Another significant governor's proposal was to provide additional funding for the transition to the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and that's included as well. So those are just some of the highlights, and again, I really appreciate being able to be here today, and we can answer any questions you have about specific proposals too. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, members, I think we're actually going to start out with Article 11. And who from nonpartisan staff would like to take that?
Madam Chair and members, Article 11 is the Economic Supports Article. This article addresses SNAP eligibility for students enrolled in higher education. It also makes modifications to the Family Assets for Independence in Minnesota, the FAME program. And it modifies the amount of funding available for administration for the diaper distribution grant program. That concludes Article 11.
Thank you. Representative Pinto, Senator Wickland, would you like to make any comments? And I'll open up for questions. All right, members, does anybody have any questions about this article or comments? With that, all those in favor of adopting Article 11, please say aye. Oh, sorry, excuse me? Sorry. Everybody in favor of adopting Article 11 with staff able to make technical corrections, please say aye. Aye. So those opposed say no. Article 11 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 12.
Madam Chair and members, Article 12 is the Housing and Homelessness article. This article contains provisions directing the Department of Human Services to enter into contracts for 2 studies, one on the emergency shelter needs of transgender adults experiencing homelessness, and the other for the number and needs of pregnant and parenting youth experiencing homelessness. It also contains a technical fix related to housing support supplemental service rates. That concludes Article 12.
Thank you. Members, any comments or questions on Article 12? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting Article 12 with staff and revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 12 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 13.
Madam Chair and members, Article 13 is the child care licensing article. This article establishes a child care weighted risk system that provides a licensing enforcement framework for both family child care providers and child care centers. The article also makes the what's in current law as the fix-it ticket system. It makes that expire upon implementation of the weighted risk system. And then the article makes modifications to when family child care providers need to retake first aid and CPR training. And that concludes Article 13.
Members, any questions or comments on Article 13? Seeing none, Article 13, we're going to vote on Article 13 to be adopted with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 13 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 14. We are in a brief recess. Members, we're going to come back here. We were left off on Article 14. So if nonpartisan staff wants to move to Article 14,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Article 14 is the article for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. It is a long article, but I'm going to be very high level here. The article contains a lot of provisions that clarify the role of the new department. And then there are also a number of provisions that make technical changes to the recodification law that was passed earlier this session. And that is Article 14.
thank you. Members, are there any thoughts or questions on Article 14? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting Article 14 with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 14 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 15.
Madam Chair, members, Article 15 makes modifications to the Minnesota Indian Family Preservation Act. These changes are technical and reading from the wrong one. Technical and conforming changes, modifying definitions, and the requirements for appointment of counsel and child placement case procedures that involve Indian children.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Article 15? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 15 with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 15 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 17.
Article 17 is the Children and Families Policy article, and it contains provisions that make technical and policy changes to economic support programs for children and families and to child safety and placement procedures, and it also clarifies the requirements governing birth records and adoption records.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, this is probably worth noting. I believe staff can please correct me, but the provisions in this article were carried in the Senate, but also passed through the House in House File 4459, which was a bill that passed through the Children and Families Committee. I don't believe it actually passed off the House floor, but it was certainly carried in the Senate. But just for folks kind of making a comparison there, wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. With that, members, I move to adopt Article 17. All those with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 17 is adopted. We have Article 18.
Madam Chair, members, Article 18 is the Department of Human Services Office of Inspector General Child Policy article, and it makes policy and technical changes to the licensing processes for child care and foster care.
Members, are there any questions about Article 18? Seeing none, I move to adopt Article 18 with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 18 is adopted. Next up is Article 19.
Madam Chair, members, Article 19 is the miscellaneous article, and it contains two technical corrections, one being a correction to the expiration of the Homeless Youth Cash Pilot Program that was passed last session, and then the other requires the Commissioner of Management and Budget to include the amounts of federal reimbursement for administrative costs to also include the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Article 19? Seeing none, I move to adopt Article 19 with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Article 19 is adopted. Next up, we have Article 20.
Madam Chair, members, Article 20 is the Health and Human Services Forecast Adjustment article.
Thank you, members. Are there any questions or comments on Article 19? Oh, we're just checking to make sure we all have it here.
Yeah.
Oh, it says CF_FORE if folks are looking for it.
Okay.
And it's one page back to front.
12?
Oh, we also had another thing that was labeled Article 12, Housing and Homelessness, but this is labeled, that is going to be called the forecast article. And I want to thank staff for getting all these copies ready. Are there any other questions on, or are there any questions on, I'll give everybody a second to look at it. These are the normal forecast adjustments that are usually on the bottom of finance bills. Education finance was a little different this year because we adopted the forecast articles earlier in session. Any questions? Terry, okay? Got it. No problem. I move to adopt the forecast article with staff and the revisers authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The forecast article is adopted. Next up, we have, let's see here. We're going to come back to the appropriations article and Article 10 a little later today. But right now, we're going to walk through the K through 12 spreadsheet. Oh, actually, did Representative Pinto and Senator Wickland, did you want to say something now, or do you want to wait until later on when we come back for the other three items?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I guess not.
all right, got it. So, Ms. Beckel, could you please walk through the K through 12 spreadsheet?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Solveig Beckel, House Fiscal. My colleague Jenna Hofer and I will be walking through the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet we're going to be working off of is the 2024 Legislature Education Finance Committee's net changes from February 2024 forecast base, House File 5237 Conference Committee Agreement, Articles 1 through 11 spreadsheet. So I'll give you a moment to find that in your packets. There are a few provisions or a few appropriations that did not make their way into the final conference committee agreement, so I will skip over those as we go through the spreadsheet. Line 2 of the spreadsheet begins the general education appropriations. Line 3 shows the compensatory pilot program being reinstated. This has a cost of $13.918 million in fiscal years 26 and 27 only, and ongoing. Line 4 shows the English Learner Task Force, which has a cost of $117,000 in fiscal year 25 only. Line 5 begins the appropriations for the additional voluntary pre-kindergarten seats. Those will be scattered throughout the bill and throughout this spreadsheet and just reflect the increase of 5,200 voluntary pre-kindergarten seats that are established in this bill in Article 10, and then the various aid that is impacted by this is just spread throughout. So this is the general education article being impacted by that. And that has a cost of $29.806 million in fiscal year 25 and $3.311 million in fiscal year 26. Line 6 shows the local optional revenue levy offset for the voluntary pre-kindergarten seats. This has a cost of $3.894 million in fiscal year 25 and $432,000 in fiscal year 26. Line 7 shows the operating capital revenue levy offset. This has a cost of $826,000 in fiscal year 25 and $92,000 in fiscal year 26. Line 8 shows the Minnesota Alliance with Youth Promise Fellows appropriation. This has availability through fiscal year 2026 and is for attendance work by the Promise Fellows. Line 9 shows the Student Attendance Legislative Study Group. This is for legislators to work on the issues concerning the current absenteeism issue in Minnesota schools. Line 10 shows the Student Attendance Pilot Program. This is appropriated $4.687 million in fiscal year 2025 with availability through the end of fiscal year 2026. And you heard about the various schools that were included in this program earlier on, and Augsburg was the one that was added in this pilot program. Line 11 shows the Wyndham School District one-time supplemental aid being the clawback of the funds that were not used. So the Wyndham School District ended up only needing $160,000 of the dollars set aside. So the $840,000 will cancel regardless. So this committee is just sort of pulling that to be used in its target. Line 12 begins the Education Excellence Appropriations. On line 13 is the Achievement and Integration aid increase for the voluntary pre-kindergarten seats. This has a cost of $304,000 in fiscal year '25 and $34,000 in fiscal year '26. Line 14 is the Civic Education Grants. This is appropriated $150,000 in fiscal year '25 only. Line 15 is the Computer Science Pelsby Licensing Carve-Out. So there were $500,000 appropriated per year in fiscal years '24 and '25 for computer science advancement. This simply carves out $50,000 in fiscal year '25 for Pelsby to work on computer science teacher licensing standards. Line 18 shows the Emergency Medical Training Grant and an increase of $250,000 to be put toward the St. Cloud EMS facility. Line 20 shows the health standards rulemaking costs. This has a cost of $627,000 in fiscal year '27 and is available through fiscal year in fiscal year '25 and is available through fiscal year 2027. And this is for rulemaking, the Standards Committee, and a full-time equivalent. Line 21 is the appropriation for the Minnesota Alliance with Youth Council. This receives $375,000 in fiscal year '25 only, but is available through fiscal year '26. Lines 22 and 23 work together. There was advocates wanted the PTEC school appropriation in fiscal year '25 to be available through fiscal year 2027. So to align with budget rules requirements, the current fiscal year '25 appropriation and the other appropriations following are being canceled on line 22, and then you see them reappropriated on line 23. Then line 25 begins the READ Act. On line 26, the professional development appropriation is increased by $4 million in fiscal year 2025 and is available through fiscal year 2028. Then, if you'll turn the page with me, we'll look at the supplemental READ Act funding. On line 30, the committee appropriated $375,000 in fiscal year '25, available through fiscal year '26 for the CARE professional and paraprofessional and volunteer training. On line 31, the committee appropriated $1 million available through fiscal year 2026 for culturally responsive materials. Line 32, the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing Working Group is appropriated $100,000 to do its work, and that also has availability through fiscal year '26. Line 33 is the appropriation for the Regional Literacy Networks, paraprofessional and volunteer training, and this also receives $375,000 in fiscal year '25 with availability through fiscal year '26, like line 30. And then finally, line 34 is the teacher compensation for READ Act training. This is the bulk of the funding for the READ Act training. This receives $31.375 million in fiscal year '25, which is expected to go out fairly quickly. And Madam Chair, I will now turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Hofer.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, beginning on line 35 are appropriations for the teachers article. On line 36 is an appropriation for the alternative teacher compensation aid. This is an increase of $450,000 in fiscal year 2025 and an increase of $50,000 in fiscal year 2026 for the additional VPK seats. On line 37 is an appropriation for the Aspiring Teachers of Color Scholarships Program. This is $1 million in fiscal year 2025 only. That's transferred to the Office of Higher Education. On line 40 is an appropriation for the Paid Student Teaching Pilot Program. This appropriation is available through fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $6,543,000 in fiscal year 2025. And as discussed last night, Augsburg is the college that's being added to this program. On line 41 is an appropriation for the Special Education Apprenticeship Programs. This is $1,030,000 in fiscal year 2025 only, and this is available through fiscal year 2027. Line 42 provides an appropriation for the Teacher and Paraprofessional Compensation Working Group for the administrative costs and per diem costs of members in the amount of $150,000 in fiscal year 2025 only. Line 43 begins appropriations for the American Indian Education article. On line 44 is an appropriation for the Permanent School Fund Supplemental Aid for American Indian Schools. This is a one-time appropriation of $40,000 in fiscal year 2025. Line 45 begins appropriations for the Charter School article. On line 46 is an increase to charter school lease aid for the additional VPK seats authorized under the bill. This would increase appropriations in fiscal year 2025 by $328,000 and in fiscal year 2026 by $37,000. Line 48 begins the special education appropriations. On line 50 is an increase to special education aid for the additional VPK seats authorized under the bill. This would increase fiscal year 2025 appropriations by $1,041,000 and fiscal year 2026 appropriations by $146,000. Skipping down to line 53, you'll see appropriations for the facilities articles. Line 54 increases the long-term facilities maintenance aid for the additional voluntary pre-kindergarten seats authorized under this bill in the amount of $235,000 in fiscal year 2025 and $26,000 in fiscal year 2026. On line 55, begin appropriations for the nutrition and libraries articles. Similar to the last few appropriations, both of these would be increases as a result of the additional voluntary pre-kindergarten seats under the bill. Line 56 is an increase to the school breakfast appropriation in the amount of $413,000 in fiscal year 2025. And as you'll turn to page 3, on line 57, you'll see an increase to the school lunch appropriation in the amount of $699,000 in fiscal year 2025. Line 58 provides part of the funding for the state school librarian. In fiscal year 2026 and later, school library aid would be reduced proportionally for school districts and charter schools in the amount of $130,000 per year for the state school librarian. Line 59 begins appropriations for the state agencies. On line 60 is an appropriation to the Department of Education for the Permanent School Fund Distribution of Earnings Task Force for administrative costs and per diem for members in the amount of $64,000 in fiscal year 2025 only, and this appropriation is available through fiscal year 2026. Line 61 is the second component of the state school librarian funding. This would be a one-time increase to the Department of Education's budget in the amount of $64,000 in fiscal year 2025. Line 63 is an appropriation to the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, or PELSB, for the educator's online licensing system and IT costs. This is a one-time appropriation of $2,767,000 in fiscal year 2025, and this appropriation is available through fiscal year 2027. Line 64 are the early childhood education appropriations. On line 65, you'll see the voluntary pre-kindergarten reserve allocation is repealed under this bill, and that would be a reduction in general fund appropriations of $50 million in fiscal year 2025. And as Ms. Beckel described earlier, this is distributed through the school finance funding formulas, as you've seen previously in the spreadsheet. Line 66 provides the total general fund adjustments under the bill. For the fiscal year 2024-2025 biennium, it's an increase in general fund appropriations of $43 million. And in the fiscal year 2026-2027 biennium, appropriations are increased by $18,046,000. There are some special revenue fund adjustments under the bill as well. On line 69 is the adjustment for the unemployment aid for hourly workers over the summer that the House and Senate both carried. This would allow the Department of Education to pay the unemployment aid on a 90% current and 10% final year payment schedule rather than 100% in the current year. As a result, this shifts $5,160,000 from the first biennium into the second biennium. On line 73 are the levy adjustments under the bill. These all relate to the voluntary pre-kindergarten seat increase. I won't maybe go through each line individually on these, as we've described those previously, and they are the same as the House and the Senate carried into the conference committee. But if you'll turn to page 4, you can see that on line 84, there is a 0 increase in statewide levies for each year in the fiscal year 2024-25 and fiscal year 2026-27 bienniums. And I'll briefly walk you through a few of the footnotes on the spreadsheet. So the first asterisk indicates that the conference committee agreement will be extending the fiscal year 2027 compensatory education revenue statewide minimum aid entitlement of $857,152,000 into fiscal year 2028 and later. The conference committee also agreed to increase the cap on IT expenditures from the Early Learning Scholarship account in the Special Revenue Fund. Under current law, that's $5 million, and this bill would increase that to $12 million for the creation of Early Learning Scholarship IT systems. And it would also increase the annual IT maintenance costs allowed from the Special Revenue Fund account from $750,000 per year to $2.4 million per year. Additionally, the conference committee will be making some technical clarifications to the calculation of the English learner revenue, which will result in a minimal but unknown fiscal impact in fiscal years 2029 and later. And finally, the conference committee agreement will allow up to 2% or $702,000 of the annual Head Start appropriation to be used by the Department of Education for administrative costs. Madam Chair and members, that concludes the spreadsheet walkthrough, and Ms. Beckel and I would be open to questions if there are any.
Thank you so much for that thorough walkthrough. We've been looking at this for so long that it's nice to hear it and have it sink in again. But members, do we have any questions on the K through 12 spreadsheet or any comments or thoughts? Seeing none. We do have to adopt the spreadsheet, so all those in favor of adopting the K through 12 spreadsheet with staff authorized to make technical corrections as needed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The spreadsheet for the K through 12 conference committee is adopted. Members, I have also been told that we can walk through and adopt the spreadsheet for Children and Children and Families HHS spreadsheet. So with that, I think we'll move on to who needs to walk through that. Please, Mr. Burke, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, members, I'm Doug Berg. I'm House Fiscal Staff for the Children and Families Committee. And Madam Chair, would you, this is a somewhat more detailed spreadsheet. Do you want the top of page 1, I think members have in their packet, spreadsheet labeled Children and Families HHS budget proposals. And in the lower right corner, it is dated today at 12:55 p.m. The upper half of the first page shows the summary appropriations by agency, and then the rest of the sheet is in detail by items. Your preference, Madam Chair, do you want to go through all of that or only part of it?
The parts that we're accepting and maybe a little bit of detail as we go through.
Okay.
Whatever you choose to do, it's fine. Similar to what Ms. Beckel and Ms. Hofer did.
Yes. Madam Chair, then if you look over, as is always the case, you have the Governor, House, and Senate positions labeled there, and on the right-hand 6 columns, you have the agreement that was reached by the 2 chairs.
Mr. Berg, if you just want to highlight the ones that are in the agreement, that's fine, too.
Okay, that's fine. If you look on line 12, you'll see on the 24-25 column under agreement, this spends $34,370,000 in general funds. And under the 26-27 columns, it spends $24,772,000 in general fund. You'll note the next line down on line 19, it is labeled. There is federal allocations of $850,000 in 24-25 and $700,000 in the tails. Looking at just the Department of Human Services, beginning on line 49, there are general fund appropriations of $28.7 million, and then below that, $500,000 in federal allocations, tails of $14.8 million, and no federal in the tails there. On line 79 is an item at the Supreme Court, which has a $1 million appropriation in 24-25 only. Beginning on line 109, the Department of Education, there is a general fund appropriation of $3,597,000 in 24-25 and $1.834 million in the tails. On line 117 is the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. There is a 24-25 appropriation of $1,024,000 and a tails appropriation of $8,142,000. On line 124 is the Family Child Care Ombudsperson. This, you'll note on line 126, is the allocation of federal funds. There is $350,000 in 24-25 and $700,000 in the tails. The Child Protection Advisory Council was a Senate position and is dealt with differently in the bill. Beginning on line 136, the specific items is, the first is the SSIS, which is the Social Services Information System Modernization Project. This is a very old computer system that runs many human services programs and needs to be replaced. This is a portion of the cost of the replacement. Beginning on line 142 is the governor's recommendation for the summer EBT program. That has a cost at DHS of $10,189,000 in 24-25 and $10,324,000 in the tails. Will come to another position down the sheet at the Department of Ed that is related to that same proposal. On the top of page 2, on line 150, is an item that was a governor's recommendation for additional funding for food security. The total in the agreement that the chair's made is $5,392,000. It is allocated between food banks, food shelves, and tribal food sovereignty, as indicated on the detail lines. On line 156 is the governor's recommendation for federal compliance in the SNAP, TANF, and Title IV-E programs. The agreement only does a portion of this. On line 161, you'll see that there's $93,000 for computing costs, systems costs at Department of Human Services for a portion of that recommendation. On line 164 is the governor's recommendation for a weighted risk system for licensed childcare providers. This has a allocation of, or appropriation of $228,000 in the current biennium and $244,000 in the tails. On line 169 is funding for the Department of Human Services related to the split of with the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. This is replacing some funding at DHS where people and systems will go to the new department. This has an appropriation of $824,000 in the current biennium and $3.296 million in the tails. Line 174 is a completely technical item that makes modifications to last year's budget bill, the Chapter 70. There are a variety of corrections of budget activities and what year they're in. This is nothing new. It simply is putting errors that were in place last year and correcting them. It is a net zero cost in the spreadsheet. Beginning at the top of page 3 is an item that was in the Senate position but is now traveling separately. On line 200 is an item of supporting relative caregiver grants. This is to promote relative care rather than foster care for some individuals. This would have a one-time cost of $550,000 in the current biennium. On line 204 is an item that deals with SSI and RSDI income reporting relative to children who are in foster care. This has a cost of $136,000 in the current biennium and $68,000 in the tails ongoing. Line 209 is the child maltreatment reporting system study. It is a one-time cost of $136,000 in the current biennium. On line 214, no, so I'll skip over that, was a Senate item that was skipped, as is on line 219, you'll see there was a Senate position for the Minnesota Food Bank program that isn't in here, but it is in the earlier item I mentioned on food banks. At the bottom of this page is line 223, which is a grant to coordinate professional development for child care providers to get an associate's credential. This has a one-time cost of $500,000 in the current biennium. Moving to page 4, on line 229 is an item that was in both the House and Senate positions that extends SNAP eligibility to college students. It has a cost of $95,000 in the current biennium and $222,000 in the tails. Line 234 is changes to the MIFPA Act. It has a admin cost of $10,000 in 24-25 and $4,000 in the tails. Line 238 is a Senate item that was related to Child Protection Advisory Council. As I noted on the summary, this was replaced by another item that we'll come to at the end of the sheet. Line 243 is the Child Mortality Review Panel modifications. Has a cost of $275,000 in the current biennium and $638,000 in the tails. Line 248 is a pregnant and parenting homeless youth study, which has a net cost of $102,000 in the current biennium and is a one-time cost. On line 253 is an emergency shelter needs analysis for transgender adults experiencing homelessness. That is also a one-time cost of $102,000 in the current biennium. Moving on to the end of the page, line 258 is an item, child care improvement grants, which has a one-time cost of $1,125,000 in the current biennium. Going to page 5, there is a cancellation on line 262 of money in Chapter 71 from 2023. This is capital investment money that was cash that was allocated to the Department of Human Services for early childhood facilities. The previous item I mentioned on page 3 or 4 that has the same number also deals with child care facilities, but in a somewhat different way. So we're canceling it an appropriation and reappropriating it effectively. Line 266 is additional funding for the Emergency Services Program of $3,391,000 in the current biennium. That's a one-time appropriation. Line 270 is an administrative reduction at the Department of Human Services Central Office, which is related to FTEs that were appropriated in fiscal 24 that were not hired. And so there's a reduction that nets to $2,774,000. That's the end of the Department of Human Services. Moving on to other agencies, beginning on line 311 is a one-time appropriation to the Supreme Court of $1 million for a child protection working group or council. On line 351 is the Department of Education. It has appropriation of $3,597,000 in the current biennium and $1,834,000 in the tails. It is for two items. Line 353 is the MDE portion of the summer EBT program, and line 354 is replacing lost money at MDE for staffing going to the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. On line 362 is the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families itself. There's an appropriation of $1,024,000 in 24-25 and $8,142,000 in the tails. Transition funding, this is for staffing and other needs related to standing up the new agency. On line 379 is an appropriation which is in the federal, not an appropriation, it is an allocation of federal funds of $350,000 a year beginning in fiscal 25 for the Family Child Care Ombudsperson. And Madam Chair, that is the end of, there's an item on the last page that was the other portion of the way the Senate handled the Child Protection Advisory Council, but that is now the item I mentioned at the Supreme Court, so that's not in here. And Madam Chair, that's the quick walkthrough of the spreadsheet.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Members, are there any questions on the spreadsheet? We are going to hold off on the adoption just because their Article 10 and the appropriations and 12 are still out yet. So with that, are there no final questions or comments? And we're going to probably recess and come back a little bit later when we have those two articles ready to go. We'll try to give you 15 to 30 minutes of notice before we come back. So with that, the Education Finance Conference Committee is in recess.